lovelies, I'm Christina and today I'm giving you my October wrap-up. So the first book I read in the month of October was How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. This was my first Matt Haig book. It was kind of a spontaneous buy, really. I was just browsing for a new book right before I was getting on a train back to my hometown, and this cover just caught my attention, and I read the back and thought it sounded interesting, so that's why I got it. It's a story about Tom Hazard. He looks like the regular 41-year-old history teacher, but he is centuries old. He's been living for a really, really long time. It's not that he's immortal, but he ages really, really slow. And he finds this community of other people who has the same kind of condition that he has. So it's a story about how he tries to fit in this world when he has to move around every 8 year or so. He's tired of moving around, he wants to settle down, but there's a rule to this society that he's a part of that he's not to fall in love and he's not to settle down. And he's also on the look for someone. It's also about his constant struggle to try to find answers about this person. So it was a really enjoyable read. I really like Matt Haig's writing, and he's definitely an author that I'm interested to read more of. I'm actually currently reading Humans by him, which I'm really, really enjoying, but that one is very different from this one. Still, one that I would really recommend. I ended up giving this 4 stars. Next up is a poetry collection, and that is Flux by Orion Carloto. Orion Carloto is a YouTuber, and she makes these really poetic, beautiful videos that I really love. But this is a collection of her poetry and also some illustrations. I don't think she did the illustrations herself, but they are really beautiful, simplistic drawings that I think complements her poetry really well. And I thought it just made it for an even more interesting collection. You also throughout have pages of her notes, so I'm guessing these are really kind of raw emotions in the middle of everything, but she's blacked out names and stuff like that. But it just gives a really interesting insight to another broken heart, and it's something that we can all relate to. I really enjoyed this, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. The next poetry collection that I read was Our Numbered Days by Neil Hilborn. As I mentioned in my haul, if you are into slam poetry, you will probably have seen some of Hilborn's slam poetry here on YouTube already. If you haven't, I highly recommend you do so. This is a collection of some of his poems. I really enjoyed this. I will say though, I kind of like his poetry style more in video form, or not so much in video form, but I like them more when he reads them. There's a certain kind of strength to his poetry that I feel comes forth way better when he reads his own poetry. But that being said, I still really enjoyed this, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Next up, we have I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. In I, Robot, Asimov sets out the 3 laws of robotics designed to protect humans from their robotic creations and pushes them to their limits and beyond. Following genius robo-psychologist Dr. Susan Calvin and engineers Powell and Donovan, these short stories helped transform artificial intelligence from a dream into a science and changed perceptions of robots forever. So this tells some different stories about the evolution of robots and the artificial intelligence and how people reacted to it and the kind of things that went wrong with it, as well as the things that were very much functional. So I really enjoyed this, and I really do enjoy Asimov's writing. I do really want to keep on collecting and reading these editions of Asimov's fantastic science fiction writing. They are just stunning, and he is the father of science fiction, I have to say. I just love it. I ended up giving this 5 stars. Next up, I read The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. This is the story of Lale Sokolov. He got the job to tattoo the ID numbers on other prisoners in the concentration camp in Auschwitz. And he fell in love with a woman there, and it is the story of how he does everything in his power so that they both can survive and have a future together after the war. It is based on true events. The author spent 3 years together with Sokolov to get every piece of information she could possibly get. She also talked to his family, and she's put together a book that tells his story so beautifully. I cried like a baby. I'm sensitive to Second World War, Holocaust-themed books, and especially those who are based on true stories, and this one was just heartbreaking but so beautifully written and so important. Oh, beautiful book, and a story that definitely deserves to be told. I ended up giving this 5 stars. Next up, we have a book that's been on my shelf forever, and I should have read it a long time ago. I'm probably one of the latest ones to the party here, but better late than never. That's Fangirl by Rowell. I know, right? Everyone on BookTube has read this, except for me, but now I have. This is the story about twin sisters, as you probably know, when they go off to college, and it focuses on Kath. Kath writes fan fiction and is just so engulfed in this world of fan fiction, and she's a big fan fiction author. She has a lot of followers, and her life is kind of revolved around her writing. And when she goes off to college, real life kind of happens, and it's the story of how the sisters are torn a bit apart. They are growing in different directions. She meets guys, and it's just a nice coming of age story, and one that I really enjoyed. I think I would have enjoyed it even more if I read it when I was a bit younger, but still, it was a book that I flew through, a very easy, sweet read, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Then I read Normal People by Sally Rooney. This one was longlisted for the Man Booker Prize of 2018. This is a story about Connell and Marion. Marion is from a wealthy family, but she's awkward. She's one of the odd ones out at her school. Then you have Connell, who's one of the popular guys, but his mom works as a cleaning lady at Marion's family's house. Because of this, Connell and Marion, they meet and they make this connection and have a very special bond. So it's the story of how Connell and Marion is kind of torn apart but drawn back together over and over again, and their paths just seems to cross all of the time, and it's the story of their weird relationship, and it's a story about love and how it's hard for normal people to love and to know what's going on in their lives. And so it's a coming of age story, but a very different kind, but one that I think that a lot of people can relate to, because love is hard, it's messy. I really like that Normal People didn't sugarcoat the love stories of normal people, and that was something that I just truly appreciated, and something that I feel like I've been missing. So very enjoyable, a bit different, but I can see why it was longlisted. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Then I listened to an audiobook, and that was The Power of Now, A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment by Eckhart Tolle, which I know a lot of people have already read or listened to. This has been on my to-read list for a long time. I'm a person that's very mindful in my life, and I try to stay very much in the now, even though it can be really hard. I thought that The Power of Now was very interesting. It does have some really good tools to use. The one thing that was kind of lacking for me in this sense, which was why it ended up being a 4 stars instead of a 5 stars, is that the audiobook is narrated by the author, and for me, his voice and the way he reads his book has my mind drifting at times. It just didn't grab me and hold me tight throughout the whole book. So for me, that was kind of a letdown, so maybe I should read the book instead of listen to it. So I might do that later on, but for now, it was still an enjoyable listen, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Then comes one of my favorite reads of October, and that was Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This one is going around booktube like crazy, and I can understand why. To read this, and this is the reason why I think it's being compared to Harry Potter a lot. It's not that it's a similar story, even though both book series has magic elements in it, but I think it's this very magical feeling of going into this world. It just feels like I'm a kid again when I read this. Sometimes when you're an adult reading a children's book, it really feels like you're an adult reading a book for children, and you're not as easily captured by it. This one just made me feel all of the feels that I had when I first read Harry Potter as a 10, 11-year-old girl, and just falling in love with something magical and letting myself just escape from reality and jump into this world, which was something that I truly enjoyed, and I can't wait to continue on with the series, and I hope it just gets even better from here. I ended up giving this 5 stars. Then I read a Norwegian novel that was sent to me by Juritzen Forlag, the publisher house. That was De du ikke kjenner by Hedda Tollefsrud. There are 3 women. They are supposed to meet at a mysterious place, and someone who has made them come to that place wants them dead. So you get to know these 3 women who in different ways feel trapped by their own minds, either by anxiety or depression or just mental health in general is a very occurring theme throughout this book. And I thought it was interesting. I liked the writing style. When I came about halfway through, I kind of knew where this story was going, but still I enjoyed it. I think it could have been done even a little bit more mysterious, but then again, it could be just me that kind of put the pieces together a bit quickly. I didn't fall in love with the characters. I didn't feel like I got to fully get to know them as much as I wanted to, but got the tidbits and a bit of a deeper insight to their mental health stories. Even though I found it to be interesting and well written, it didn't just grab me. I was kind of expecting a psychological thriller, but that's not really what this is. I might have even enjoyed it a little bit more if I'd known that that was the case. Maybe. I ended up giving it 3 stars. And then the last book of October was an audiobook, and that was Elevation by Stephen King. I have a full review of this up, so you can go check that out if you want to. But this is a story about Scott. Scott is steadily losing weight, although it doesn't show on his body, and no matter how much clothes he has on or off or whatever heavy tools he is carrying, he weighs the exact same on the scale. So nothing that he touches adds any weight to the scale. It's just the same, and it steadily drops. It is also the story of him living in Castle Rock, of course, his neighbors, who is a lesbian married couple, and how he discovers the prejudice of Castle Rock towards this lesbian couple who is trying to run a vegetarian restaurant, and how himself has been very judgmental towards them. So it's a combination of several things here, but it's a very interesting story. The audiobook version that I listened to also have an extra story, which is Lori, which is a story about a man who's lost his wife, and then his sister brings a puppy into his life. And it is the story of their relationship, and it's very clearly an ode to his love for dogs, and something that I really enjoyed as well. I think both stories were very interesting, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. That being said, if you are looking for pure like Stephen King horror, this is not that. It is more of a mysterious and kind of a bit supernatural. So there you have it. Those are the books that I've read in the month of October, plus a couple of audiobooks. Let me know what you've been reading lately, if you have any new recommendations for me. And as always, you can find links to all of the books I've mentioned in the thingamajiggy down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And I will see you in my next video soon. Goodbye!